And we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm not sure if everyone is here yet, so if you could open the chat and say hi and say where you're from in the world right now. We have quite a few different countries. Sophia, Mariana. Nice. How do I open the chat? I think you've written in the chat. Natalie, Joseph. Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm super excited that you are all here. This is a pretty big deal. This is the first ever high existence live event that we've ever done online. And I'm personally really excited that we're going to be doing it on Stoicism. This particular workshop is going to be a little bit different from the others because we're typically in the other workshops going to be diving into some really meaty content that focuses on a specific part of Stoicism. This is going to be more about an overview. And the way that this is going to go is that I'm going to tell you, first of all, I'm going to ask you a question that I want you to contemplate. And then I'm going to tell you about my life, so a bit about my story. I'm going to open up a bit, which has taken me quite a while to be able to do properly. Then we're going to talk about the origins of Stoicism and the beliefs that many Stoics have. And then finally, we're going to wrap up and talk about the next 8 weeks. We're going to look at the weeks that are going to come. I'm not going to reveal too much information. I'm going to break down each week, and then I'm going to give you this week's challenges. I don't know if you've played around in the community yet, but you will be doing a lot of that this week. So I want to begin, if you can see the slides there, with what I consider to be the core themes of the Stoic quest. This is not going to be an academic run through of Stoicism. This is a quest that's going to focus on how to be a Stoic, not on how to teach Stoicism. I've spoken to really knowledgeable people about Stoicism, really knowledgeable people about philosophy. But what I tend to admire in other people is how they live their life. I tend to look at their energy and the way they handle setbacks and hardships and tragedy and success and relationships. And I value wisdom. So this is going to be about being, not doing necessarily. This is a quest that focuses on first-hand experience over second-hand experience. There are two ways generally that we learn. We learn from our own senses, from our own embodied action and understanding. And then we can learn socially. And learning socially is really, really good because it's quick. You can make a mistake. I can watch you make the mistake. Like if you went off a cliff, I'd watch you go off the cliff. I wouldn't go off the cliff myself. It saves me time, keeps me alive. It's good. The problem is with that is that you're always getting bombarded with messages from other people and society and the news and magazines. And some of it is not really helping you. And we're going to be focusing on not just learning from the ancient Stoics, which will be a part of it. That's type of social learning, but actually putting it into practice. The other thing that's going to be unique with this quest is that we're going to focus not on a lot of depth. We're going to focus on a simple approach to Stoicism. There actually aren't that many ideas in Stoicism. The tricky part is in applying them. So we're not going to be just accumulating in a type of ego-based learning, one piece of the puzzle, hoping that if I learn this technique, I'm going to feel better. And then I'm going to learn another technique, I'm going to feel better. This is going to be about taking like 5 to 10 core ideas and then embodying them. That to me is wisdom. This quest puts experimentation and learning above certainty and perfection. So one of my role models is Leonardo da Vinci. And if you know anything about Leonardo, he was illegitimate and he couldn't attend university. And with a very stoic approach, he owned that. And he said, well, if I can't go to university, cool. I will be a disciple of experience. And that led him to experiment almost to a fault with some of his paintings. He didn't finish them, but the reward was who he became in the process. This is a quest that puts leading by example above leading through just words. So Marcus Aurelius in Meditations, he said something to the effect of, stop talking about being a good man and be one. So we always want to be checking in with ourselves. This is a quest that places you at the judge of your own progress. We're not here to try and get approval. I'm not going to be the one to judge you. Everyone in this group is going to be there to support you, to give you feedback. But you need to get in touch with your intuition and listen to that compass. Oh, am I kind of going into vice? Am I going into virtue? We always know when we're doing the wrong thing. And over the next 8 weeks, we want to get better and better and better at being our own witness and stop feeling like we need to look at other people to tell us who we are. And this is a quest that doesn't actually last 8 weeks. It lasts for our entire life, because if you're going to be practicing learning how to die, which is one of the most important methods for learning how to live, then you've probably got a long way before you put that into practice. And I don't want you to see me as, we'll crack into this when I tell you my story, as some sort of teacher that's higher than you in any way. Seneca saw himself as not as a physician giving prescriptions out, but as someone who was ill and was going through a recovery and documenting his own recovery to the patients in the bed next to him. So that's what we are. We're all patients, we're all growing, we're all healing, we're all on our journey, and we want to share that with each other. No one is better than anyone else. So those are the core themes that we're going to be keeping in mind as we go throughout this quest. So now I want to ask you a question. And it's a very simple, cliche question, but I want you to let it sink in. The question is, what do you want out of life? Just think about it for a minute. What do you want? Now, I'm sure there'll be many different answers. I'd love to actually talk to you about this in the community. If you feel like, you can write a few words in the chat box. Some of you, I'm sure, will have written quite general answers, like I want to be happy, or I want to flourish, I want to be a good person, I want to live in the present moment. Those are very good answers. There's really no right or wrong answer. Other people might sort of say that they want something more concrete, like I want to write a book, I want to achieve this, I want to start my own business, I want to write a great novel, I want to do art and have my own gallery exhibition. Others might be a bit more sort of primal and short term, like I want to get a nice car, I want to get a six-pack, I want to get a really hot partner, I want to get 1 million followers on Instagram. All of these are cool, fine. It doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong, but the exercise is there to point to you, to ask you, have you actually thought about this deeply? And society doesn't really encourage these kinds of questions. If you're here in this group now, I'm sure you've probably thought about this kind of stuff before. But there's a lot of value in this question, because what I'm really asking you is, do you have a philosophy of life? Do you have a blueprint? Do you have some sort of North Star that you're using to guide you and direct you? Some people might go, I don't need that. I like just being spontaneous, going with the flow, and that's fine. You might actually just not think about it at all and live an amazing life, and then be on your deathbed, have no regrets, and pass on, and it's all good. Or you might not. It's a roll of the dice. So the Stoics and many of the wisest people who ever lived would encourage us to think about this and to try and cultivate a philosophy of life, because if we don't, we might mislive. You know, life can be really tricky. Do you have a plan in your mind for if you became famous tomorrow, or if you became a billionaire? What would you do? Could you handle it? Would you have a strategy? Being successful can be really scary. It can be dangerous. Friends can turn on you. What if you got the partner of your dreams? What if you lost everything? What if you became suicidal? What if you had deaths in your family? What if you became really ill? There are many things that can happen, and having a philosophy of life is very useful. And the philosophy of life that I found most useful is Stoicism. So now I want to switch into telling you about my story. And in telling you about my story, I'll get to why I find Stoicism so powerful. So I'm from Wales, from the Welsh valleys. I'm surrounded by mountains. And I've always kind of asked questions. I don't want to judge the people that I'm surrounded by, but I've always felt like a bit of an outsider. I've always asked questions. I've always tried to figure out what's going on beneath the surface. In high school, I was kind of like nicknamed and mocked a little bit for like being the philosopher. I never really identified with a philosopher though. I identified more with the artist, because I've always been creative. I've always been that guy in class who draws, who paints, who sculpts. I've actually got a painting here I did of a skull, which is like a way to remember our own mortality. It's a very uplifting image. But there's an overlap between art and philosophy, like, because when you draw something, you are forced to look beyond the surface of things. You have to study it. You have to use concentration and discipline. You have to see the potential of what can be. I remember once I was drawing something in school. I think I was painting something, and I was using a photograph, and I was just drawing away. And my teacher said, "You shouldn't use a photograph because it would be very flat. You should draw from life." And I said to him, "Well, why would I want to draw from life? This photograph is perfect. It doesn't move. I got a lovely view of it." He says, "Because you won't be able to see behind it, behind the thing you're drawing." And I was like, why would I want to see behind the thing I'm drawing? And then I got it. The art is about understanding. It's about seeing the whole picture, even if you're going to represent one small area of it. Anyway, being an artistic person, I was quite sensitive. And even though I had creativity and self-discipline, I did have a pretty bad temper when I was growing up. Like, I got angry, I lashed out at people, fighting in school a lot. I was quite hard to handle as a kid. Definitely didn't like being told what to do, would argue with grown-ups a lot. And was just labeled cheeky, a quite cheeky person. In my teenage years, as I got a bit older, I was pretty insecure. I was terrified of girls, really terrified of women. They made me feel very self-conscious. I didn't like the way I looked. And I was just shy, and I kind of made myself a bit of a loner. And I gravitated towards other kids who also seemed somewhat broken or damaged, or I had a great upbringing, but I just I felt kind of this like pull towards other people. Maybe they were more interesting to me. And my best friend was Nathan, and he was the fattest guy in the school. And we were like 12, 13. And to a lot of people in the school, me and Nathan, we looked kind of like losers. But we had a very rich inner world. That's why we got along. We loved to learn, and we started to study magic together. And we started reading books on David Blaine and buying videos and spending our pocket money on cards. And Mike, who many of you have met, is a magician, really good magician. So that's quite a cool overlap there. And during the process of learning magic, we learned something way more important. We learned how to learn. We learned that if we practiced, if we applied ourselves, if we broke things down and we attacked problems the right way, we could transform ourselves, we could impress people, and we could just seek growth, we could seek progress. So when we learned how to do magic, that opened up this doorway. Well, what else can we learn? And we started learning how to play guitar because we like music. So we both started to learn how to play guitar, and we formed a band. And magic, guitar. Nate, then being the fattest kid in school, was like, I've learned how to play guitar. I've learned how to do magic. I should be able to learn how to lose weight. So he went on to lose 150 pounds. And that was 15 years ago, and he's kept it off. And he's been in the newspapers and stuff. I'll show you an image of him. If you look at the slides, it's pretty impressive. So he's my best friend back home. So deep transformation is something that I've been exposed to from a young age. I've experienced it firsthand in myself and in people close to me. And with the right dedication and being smart, you can really change inside and out. So me and Nate, we were in a band together, and I'm about 18 at this point. And we just had a new bass player in the band. And he was about 6'5", tattooed, quite a dark character, friendly. He was a good guy, but he'd been to jail like 5 times. But I wasn't really thinking too much about it. I was 18, playing guitar. One day we go to band practice, and I'm driving him home, and I realized that he's drunk, and he's sleeping in the car behind me. So it's me, the singer, and the bass player who's drunk behind me. And as I'm driving down a dark road, I feel these icy hands grip my throat from behind. And it's squeezing quite tight. It's like, I can't really talk. It doesn't feel like a joke, but I think he's drunk. Maybe he doesn't know his own strength. So the singer next to me is sort of like laughing. He's like, oh, that guy is just messing around. But it doesn't feel like messing around to me. So I say, can you get off? And then the singer says some words that I won't forget. He says, John, he's got a knife. And this guy, he carried an army knife around with him. And I could feel the blade cutting into my sort of neck there as I was driving with the seatbelt on. And we were on about a 30-mile-an-hour road at this point, and we were about to get onto like a 60, 70-mile-an-hour road without much light. So I was telling him, can you get off? And he said, take me home or I'll stab you. I'll stab you in the head, swearing a lot. I said, okay, I'll take you home. But when I offered to do what he wanted, he said he wanted the opposite. He wasn't making any sense. I knew that I wouldn't be able to reason him out of this. So I realized I had to escape. And I just have to think, like, I need to get this knife and these hands away from my throat. I need to get under them. I need to get my seatbelt off. I need to stop the car. I need to get out of the door. So I just I chose my moment, and I did all of those things very quickly somehow. And I got out of the car and escaped. And the band broke up. That was quite an ordeal. And it's a crazy story, like, it's quite dramatic. But the reason I tell you that story is because that was my first confrontation with proper violence. and the way he was speaking to me was very violent. My first confrontation with a near death kind of thing, and it affected me. I didn't realize how much it had affected me for the first couple of months. I was still going out, I was still just with my friends. And then I went to university maybe 6 months later, and someone said, oh, someone was attacked with a knife or mugged or something with a knife. And from that moment on, something triggered in me, and I became very anxious and had symptoms very similar. I wasn't officially diagnosed to PTSD. I became very on edge. I saw everything in my environment as a threat. I would sometimes struggle to go to bed until the sun came up. If I was walking around town late at night with a friend or a girlfriend or something like this, and I saw like people in hoods or anything like suspicious, I would shut down, couldn't hear who I was with, wanted to like flee, get away. And as it escalated, I started seeing many different things in the environment as threatening to me. So every dog that I walked past, I felt like could snap at me. If I saw like a homeless person, I would feel like he would have a knife on him. Every bag in a coffee shop that no one was around, I thought could be a bomb. And I was getting quite intense feelings, and I wanted to escape. And this did get in the way of many of my relationships, because with trauma, and we're going to get into trauma next week, it's not the fear or the anxiety that makes people kill themselves with trauma. It's the feeling of isolation. It's the feeling of being different from other people. And being out at a bar with my girlfriend, and then a fight breaks, and me needing to get out of that area when my girlfriend's like, what's wrong? It's cool. It's a very uncomfortable, like it's another level of being uncomfortable on top of that. So for many years, I was very anxious and had panic attacks, trips to the hospital, thought I was having heart problems, just very, very anxious and hypervigilant. And this lasted about 10 years, honestly, like on and off. Now I don't have that at all, which I'm quite happy to tell you that there is a way out of that. But it was quite a serious thing, and out of that suffering, led me to a quest. I needed to figure out what was going on, and I needed to find out how to heal myself. So this fear that I had made me feel weak, made me feel unmanly, and did a lot of damage to my relationships. And my search for overcoming that anxiety has been one of my biggest motivations over the last decade. So that's an important story to tell you. But now I'm going to tell you, just because I think it's right, that I share with you a few other things that have happened to me over the last 10 years. So I tell you this because I want you to feel like you can relate to me, because you don't have to dig very deeply into someone's life to see that, you know, life is full of tragedy and suffering and anxiety and pain. And I want to tell you that I've experienced that too. So this is like a kind of trivial, I feel a bit strange telling you this, but I'm just going to tell you for the sake of vulnerability. When I was in university, I broke up with a girlfriend of 2 years. And then a few weeks later, she brought her new boyfriend to our house because we all had the same friends. And then it was kind of like parading him. That was very painful. In my early 20s, I had braces for 5 years. They told me it would be 2, it turned into 5. It was bad. It was like a prison sentence. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And the person who's doing my braces was a student, not a high level person. And she was always kind of unsure doing it and tightening things a bit too much here and there, and it was painful, and wires cutting into me. And at the end of that 5 years of braces, I had double jaw surgery and 4 wisdom teeth taken out at the same time. So my top jaw fractured, broken. My bottom jaw fractured. I have titanium screws in my face. Swelling, extreme swelling. Felt obviously like a monstrous, people staring at me. I still have some nerve damage. I had to have a liquid diet for about a month. My first ever travel expedition, and I was terrified at this point. The anxiety was there. I went to Thailand for 6 weeks on my own to try and get over my fears. To get over my fear of confrontation, I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and within a couple of months, I got my rib broken. I've witnessed my sister getting attacked by a Rottweiler when she was out jogging. Recently, I broke my ankle. I had to wear a cast for 3 months. Prevented me from getting around. Completely disrupted my life at the time. My last girlfriend came from a pretty rough area, and I witnessed her getting quite badly attacked as well, violent. I had to take her to the hospital. A couple of years back, my father got diagnosed with cancer. He's okay. He had to go through surgery. And my sister also had a stillborn baby at 38 weeks pregnant, unexpectedly. So quite a lot of tragedy there. And those are just a few events. And I tell you that because I want you to know that we're dealing with real stuff. This is not just some sort of cookie cutter self-improvement sort of program that we're going to be doing here. And my study of Stoicism started around the time I had to go for jaw surgery, because I was terrified about having my face broke. The surgeon told me it would be equivalent to me being thrown out of a car windscreen. So I was pretty scared, and I started. I remember I was reading Man's Search for Meaning, which is a Stoic book, then in the hospital the night before I had the surgery, and I found it to be very useful. Stoicism was very useful, and it's been with me ever since. And that was about 6 years ago that I started getting very deep into it. I've known about Stoicism since I was about 21. I'm 29 now, and I'm coming to you as someone who's not an academic. I do research and I read a lot. That's what I love to do. But I'm someone who's always trying to embody the lessons that I'm reading about. And my friends are all, I love them because they walk at the talk. They don't just talk. And same as me, I try to actually apply these Stoic principles in my own life. So that's where I'm coming from as the instructor here. Someone who's experienced, I don't know, maybe it's not that bad what I've told you, but it's a fair amount of ups and downs, of chaos. And Stoicism has been very, very helpful for me. And something to keep in mind if you are ever suffering is that Steve Taylor, who's a psychology lecturer at Leeds, and he's written some great spirituality books, he says that around 25% of people who have awakening experiences, they have that from extreme emotional turmoil. So suffering can be a really good catalyst for growth. So keep that in mind. And here's the thing. Before you give me too much sympathy, I want to switch now into some wise words from Epictetus. And this links back to the feelings you had in your body as I was talking to you. I want you to read this quote. I'm going to read it out loud. You can look at it and see if your own feelings listening to what I was telling you aligned with this quote. So, Epictetus. Epictetus was an ex-slave who turned into arguably one of the greatest Stoics of all time, Marcus Aurelius. He was a student, not in person, but a student through text of Epictetus. Epictetus is quoted in the Meditations a lot. And Epictetus says, whenever you see someone in tears, distraught because they are parted from a child or have met with some material loss, be careful lest the impression move you to believe that their circumstances are truly bad. Have ready the reflection that they are not upset by what happened, because other people are not upset when the same thing happens to them, but by their own view of the matter. Nevertheless, you should not disdain to sympathize with them, at least with your comforting words, or even to the extent of sharing outwardly in their grief, but do not commiserate with your whole heart and soul. So Epictetus is telling me that it's not the events that upset me in the past, it's my view of them. That's like, whoa, Epictetus, surely like those events were pretty bad. I don't know. I think that's the fun part of Stoicism, because someone else in my position would have reacted differently. Nietzsche, my formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it. So when the world is crashing around, everything's going wrong, do you have the strength to say that you love it? Epictetus again. If you hear a raven croak inauspiciously, so if you see a bad luck, sign of bad luck, do not be alarmed by the impression. Make a mental distinction at once and say, these omens hold no significance for me. They only pertain to my body, property, family, or reputation. For me, every sign is auspicious, if I want it to be, because whatever happens, I can derive some benefit from it. Whatever happens, I can derive some benefit from it. So anything in life can be a good luck sign. And of course, the classic, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Everything that I've told you about my life so far, I would never change. Because I love my fate. I love where I am right now. I love the insights that I've gained. I love how much wiser this journey has made me. Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist who was in the concentration camp Auschwitz, Man's Search for Meaning, he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. It's a common theme here. And I want to, before we go into some more of the story of Stoicism, I want to share with you a video. It's not very long, but this video to me is one of my favorite videos, actually. It's only a couple of minutes long. And this is by Jocko Willink, who's an ex-Navy SEAL who fought in the Battle of Ramadi in Iraq, which is one of the most violent battles. And he has a very stoic perspective when it comes to adversity. And this, I think, is, to me, the reason I'm sharing this with you now is because this is really the heart of Stoicism more than anything else. It's to love your fate regardless. It's hard, but check out this video now.
One of my direct subordinates, one of my guys that worked for me, he would call me up or pull me aside with some major problem, some issue that was going on, and he'd say, "Boss, we got this and that and the other thing." And I'd look at him and I'd say, "Good." And finally one day he was telling me about some issue that he was having, some problem, and he said, "I already know what you're going to say." And I said, "Well, what am I going to say?" He said, "You're going to say good." He said, "That's what you always say. When something is wrong and going bad, you always just look at me and say good." And I said, "Well, yeah, when things are going bad, there's going to be some good that's going to come from it. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better. Oh, mission got canceled? Good. We can focus on another one. Didn't get funded. Didn't get the job you wanted. Got injured. Sprained my ankle. Got tapped out? Good. Got beat? Good. You learned. unexpected problems? Good. We have the opportunity to figure out a solution. That's it. When things are going bad, don't get all bummed out, don't get startled, don't get frustrated. If you can say the word good, guess what? It means you're still alive. It means you're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, well, then hell, you still got some fight left in you. So get up, dust off, reload, recalibrate, re-engage, and go out on the attack.
So yes, Jocko is pretty hard to follow. He's quite aggressive, obviously, in his presentation, but the idea there is that he's valuing wisdom lessons above happiness, and we're going to look into exactly why that's a Stoic belief in a moment. So the origin of Stoicism began, as it should, with one man's loss of everything. There was a wealthy young merchant from Cyprus called Zeno, and he was transporting a cargo of purple dye across the Mediterranean. Purple dye, this type of purple dye was called royal purple, and to make even just a few grams of it, thousands of shellfish had to be dissected by hand. It was no ordinary dye. There was a violent storm, and Zeno was shipwrecked, and he almost died, but he got to shore. Overnight, he was turned from a wealthy, high-status man into a lowly beggar immigrant. In an instant, he wandered over to Athens, which was nearby, and searched around for guidance on how he should live, what he could do. Things were different, obviously, back then. There was no internet, there was no Google. You couldn't just like ring your family for help. He lost everything. Zeno went to the Oracle of Delphi, who was the wisest person. And she told him not to take on the color of dead shellfish, but to take on the color of dead men. That's pretty wise. He should take on the color not of dead shellfish, but of dead men. So Zeno didn't really know what that meant, but he thought, well, dead men, bookstore. So he went to a bookstore, started going through books, and it didn't take him long before he found a book by Xenophon. And this book had some anecdotes written about Socrates. As soon as Zeno read some of Socrates' words, his life was transformed. He dropped the book and asked the bookseller, "Where can I find a man like this today?" The bookseller pointed him toward a cynic philosopher called Crates. Cynicism was founded by a philosopher called Diogenes of Sinope. Diogenes was famous for living in a barrel, very strange, witty guy. Cynic philosophy is the precursor to Stoicism, but don't think of cynicism as like the modern vocabulary definition of cynic. Cynic, if you look up the dictionary definition, is sort of negative, mistrusting. Cynic philosopher was actually only concerned about how to be a good person, how to have excellent character. And they thought that the way to achieve this was through voluntary hardship and suffering, abstinence, denial of luxury, asceticism, if you will. drinking only when you're thirsty, so that even a glass of water feels like champagne, eating only when you're hungry, being very limited in your sexual relations, turning down wealth, turning down fame, just living a very basic life and training yourself to want the things you already have, the things that are easy to attain. Zeno liked a lot of what the Cynics taught, but he thought that it was lacking in certain ways. So he went on for the next 2 decades to try and improve upon Cynicism, and he added logic and metaphysics to the mix. So you had the self-discipline side of Cynicism, and Zeno added metaphysics and logic, and founded Zenoism, which nobody's ever heard of, because Zenoism was changed very quickly into Stoicism. And the reason it's called Stoicism was because Zeno taught on a painted porch known as the Stoa Poikile. And there's something to be said, actually, about the fact that Zenoism became Stoicism. The Stoics didn't put themselves on a pedestal. They didn't claim to have figured it all out and be ultimately wise. Like Epicurus thought that he had reached perfection. Epictetus and Zeno, they didn't. They always kind of, even Marcus Aurelius actually saw himself as a novice Stoic his entire life. He, even in middle age, and he started studying philosophy when he was 12, which was very young. But even in middle age, he was still going to sort of basic Stoic classes and workshops, and still trying to learn even towards the end of his life. I think that's a great beginner's mind approach to Stoicism. And I think while you can be an expert in the history of Stoicism, and you can be an expert, on the translations, to truly be an expert Stoic is a different thing, because that is about being extremely wise, and it's hard to judge. Only you can be the judge of your own progress, which I said in the beginning. So that is the origins of Stoicism. But what is Stoicism? Over the next few weeks, we're going to be taking a deep look into very specific aspects of Stoicism. But I'm going to give you a basic overview now. And one of the cool things about Stoicism is that there's a mysterious quality to it. This can be very frustrating, because anyone who's read Stoicism will tell you, like, yeah, I read Stoicism, I liked it, but how do you become a Stoic? Like, yeah, I read the Meditations, but it was wise, but how do I be like that? That's the problem. So the Stoics were prolific writers. They wrote a lot, and we will be later on in this course focusing on productivity and deep work, because that's very important, even as a spiritual practice, I believe. But it's said that only about 1% of everything that was written by the ancient Stoics survive. So we have a tiny amount of the original Stoic texts still around today. So it creates a mystery, because Stoic philosophy is complete. It's very systematic. There is a complete blueprint for Stoic philosophy, but we don't have it. We have to try and figure that out for ourselves. And there are 3 main writers that we get most of our understanding about Stoicism from: Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. And the cool thing is, these are all quite readable. Epictetus's handbook is one of the kind of most comprehensive overviews of Stoicism, and I think that's around 53 points. Each point's roughly a paragraph long, so it's a short book. But we have to try and figure out, okay, how do we take this ancient wisdom, this broken ancient wisdom, and create a blueprint? And again, this comes down to experimentation. We're going to be trying to create a blueprint together over the next 8 weeks. We're going to be trying different practices, talking about it in the community, and refining what Stoicism is for us modern people. So earlier I asked you, what do you want out of life? And I told you that I think having a philosophy of life is very useful, because it will prevent you from living with regret and making terrible blunders. The Stoic aim in life is very simple. The Stoic wants to live in agreement with nature. Now, okay, well, what does that really mean, live in agreement with nature? So when I think of nature, I have a connotation of like trees and the forest. Nature to a Stoic was more linked to just the way things are, with the isness of things. So there's an external nature, and the external nature is just the flow of the world, of other people, of personalities, of the weather, of the systems in place, the systems beneath the surface, so the behavioral matrix. There's everything outside of you, and then there's the inner nature. So you have a personality. You have, like, some of you are creative, some of you are logical, some of you are social, some of you are introverted. So we have a nature in ourselves too. And the goal of Stoicism is to live in accordance with nature as the flow of events as they occur, and not to fight it, because things are going to progress whether you want them to or not. You can fight it, but they're going to happen. So the Stoics would say, well, go with the flow, as a cliche. And also, Francis Bacon said that nature, to be commanded, must be obeyed. So we don't want to fight nature, our nature or the external nature. We want to obey it, and in obeying nature, external and internal, we gain some control, not complete control. We gain some peace of mind, at least. Philosophy, the word philosophy, if you break it down, it means love of wisdom, and the Stoics loved wisdom. They saw human beings, as being the most reasonable, rational creatures, and that's what separates us from animals. And in living with accordance with nature, we have to use reason, because it's in our nature. We have to use it well, and we use it to be wise. So the Stoics loved wisdom. And the two main goals in Stoicism, beyond wisdom, if you break down wisdom, was the attainment of virtue and the attainment of tranquility. Again, virtue needs some explaining. Virtue to a Stoic means excellence of character. And virtue can be broken down into what we call the 4 cardinal virtues. This is really important. Again, very simple, deep simplicity, not shallow complexity. The 4 virtues. Wisdom is number 1. How do you make decisions? How do you navigate the world? How do you think in a general sense? Self-discipline. Can you even be wise if you're not disciplined? If you can't get out of bed in the morning, if you can't do what needs to be done, but then what good are you to yourself or anyone else? Self-discipline. So self-discipline is wisdom in the face of passions, of lust, of anger. Courage is important. So the Stoics actually didn't want you to be emotionless and to feel no fear. Their philosophy was more, you have fear, okay, that's not really within your control. What you do next is. So in disaster, in death, in confrontation, can you still act wisely? And then the 4th is justice, and that applies to wisdom in the social realm. Can you be fair and kind to others, to yourself? How do you socialize? How do you feel when you get insulted? If you're very fragile, then again, can you really be of service to yourself or to others? So it's wisdom, self-discipline, courage, and justice. And just as a quick side note, you can just take a quick survey of your own life and see if there are any of those 4 that you're lacking in. And that will point you towards where a lot of your effort should be over the next 8 weeks. The Stoics saw the world, they perceived the world in a different way from us modern people. They saw the world in 3 categories. They saw the world as good, they saw the world as bad, or they saw the world as indifferent. So good was virtue. Good was virtue. Good was wisdom. Good was living in accordance with nature, living in accordance with your values. Like Jocko Willink was saying, if something bad happens, of course you're going to be unhappy, but you can learn. It's good. Bad is vices. It's lying, lack of integrity, giving in to lust. You know in your body when you do something that's not quite right, that's not quite excellent, that's bad. Unwise. And then indifferent would be pretty much everything else. So there's virtue, vice, and everything else is indifferent, which is a really weird way of seeing our world, to us at least. So what does indifferent mean? Indifferent means lacking passion. And so a few things that would be considered indifferent to a Stoic would be things like health. Because think about it, health is not a virtue or a vice. Wealth, friendship, these are indifferents. Now, it seems to us like obviously wealth is good and friends are good and health is good. Like, of course. But here's the thing. If you're not wise, you can use wealth and health and friends to do a lot of harm. And you can, and many people have. So, and alternatively, you can be ill and poor and quite lonely and still do a lot of good and still be wise and still live in accordance with nature and still live a life on your terms and set the right inner goals and be a person of value. So for these things, these seemingly obviously good things, the Stoics later categorize these as preferred indifference. Of course, we do prefer health to illness. Of course, we do prefer wealth to poverty, and we do prefer friends to enemies. But if we don't have them, that doesn't stop us from attaining virtue or wisdom. So that's not a deal breaker. If you do practice Stoicism and you do pursue the goal of attaining virtue, ultimately you will become self-sufficient. And what that means is you won't need other people's approval and society to tell you you're this or that. A lot of us live, me too as well, to some degree, live in reaction to other people. You will be immune to suffering. You will say, good, I love my fate in the face of suffering. You will be superior to the wounds and upsets of life. And even if you are a slave, you can still be free. It's a pretty lofty goal. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Stoicism and many of the finer details of Stoicism, especially the exercises. That's a general overview of Stoicism for now. Now I want to talk to you about the quest. How to embody Stoicism. So this is what we're going to be doing. So this week, as I said, is just an introduction. It's just an overview. Mainly telling you about myself and a little bit about Stoicism to fill in some of the gaps that you have. Next week, we're going to focus on reclaiming the gifts of your past and psychological fatalism. Next week will be all about trauma, past trauma, because I was traumatized and I made a mistake of thinking that I needed to improve myself on top of the trauma. And I did everything. I read, I meditated, I went to the gym, I did all of these external things, but beneath it all was the trauma, was the pattern of trauma, was the unconscious belief that wasn't helping me. So before we can optimize and grow, we need to go back deep into the roots of our past and reclaim our own stories. I'm really passionate about trauma. I did the first Apotheosis 1, I did a trauma workshop there. And I think it's incredibly powerful. And many of us, we don't give enough attention to trauma. The week after that, we're going to be looking at tranquility. Tranquility is linked to virtue. You can't really be virtuous while being chaotic and angry. It doesn't work. And likewise, you can't really be tranquil and not be virtuous, or at least they work synergistically together. That's why in Buddhism, just meditating will help you with the Noble Eightfold Path. Just meditating will help you be more compassionate because you're more in the moment, you're more responsive, as it is with Stoicism. So a large part of the quest will be focusing on resilience and how do we stop these negative things from throwing us off. Week 4 will be one of the most fun weeks. Harnessing discomfort to forge your character. So this will be a cynic's dream. We're going to be looking at voluntary discomfort and how we can use discomfort to prepare ourselves for whatever happens. You could view Stoicism. This is a good way to view Stoicism. Stoicism is preparation for the worst day of your life. And it's coming. Week 5, practices for cultivating social invincibility. Social anxiety is something I struggled with for years. I did a lot of work, a lot of scary work. I've gone out into the world and I've put my neck on the line, and I've been extremely uncomfortable in my pursuit of overcoming social anxiety. And now I don't really get social anxiety. I feel pretty confident talking to people, and I have a lot of insights to give you there. Social anxiety is super common. It's tricky. And Stoicism is amazing for social anxiety. And on top of the social anxiety, we're going to look at what I call the feared fantasy. So this comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, which if you don't know, cognitive behavioral therapy comes from Stoicism, but they've refined some ideas in Stoicism into more of a kind of an intervention, a short-term intervention approach. And we can use some of those interventions in our Stoic work. And this will just help you with any kind of disaster or any kind of fear relating to anything. Week 7, uncommon among the uncommon, a strategy for superhuman self-discipline. This week, we're going to identify with being, not in an egotistical way, but being separate from the herd. We want to be uncommon. We want to do the things that other people are not willing to do, to live in accordance with our nature. And this quest is a Stoic quest, but it's also a quest that I want us to all transform and live the best lives we can. And we're going to be doing a lot of deep work, a lot of cultivating focus here. For me, getting distracted is something that has plagued me for many years. Just like I'm doing some work and then I get this interruption and I get sidetracked and I can't get done what I need to get done. And it's been a major struggle of mine for a long time. And I had to try and figure that out. And again, Stoicism is very useful for this. And then week 8, we're going to be putting everything together. And this will be the concluding workshop. There will be a week of exercises and discussions after that. But the community will continue on after this. So the quest will continue on after the 8 weeks. And of course, you'll be able to replay through all of it at any point or zone in on particular lessons if you want. So that concludes the overview of the quest. Now I'm going to give you this week's actions. So this is how the quest is going to be broken up. When you log into the community, you're going to get a daily challenge. This is a challenge for you to perform every day. It's the same thing every day. On top of that, you're going to get a weekly action, which is a one-time challenge. So there's a daily challenge, and then the weekly action is a once per week challenge, because it's going to be maybe a bit more tricky. There will be discussions. and writing prompts in the community as well, that we've provided as prompts to guide you in certain ways. Again, this is about the experience, so don't think too much about it. Just sort of make a commitment to just practice discipline and check in, and don't just think about yourself. Like, realize that being here, you are helping everyone else in the group. You are everyone else's support. There's a quote that I love. Be excellent ... to each other. So it's self and other improvement. This is a community. So please engage with the discussions and give feedback and feel safe. I want you to feel completely psychologically safe. There aren't going to be any trolls, any negativity. We've handpicked every one of you, spoken to you all individually, and you're all amazing. So this week's action is called Marcus's Mirror. And we're going to dive straight into something a bit morbid here. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor. We're going to be learning more from him. When he was dying, he looked over and he looked into a mirror. And as he stared into the mirror, he contemplated all of the dead Roman emperors that came before him. This was a Stoic exercise that his teacher Rusticus passed down to him. And this is your action. I want you this week to get, for 5 minutes, to get in front of a mirror and to stare into the mirror, look at yourself, and imagine that the person staring back at you are your dead ancestors, grandparents, parents, any kind of family member, but just ideally someone related to you or friends, and just really feel them looking back at you and feel that they too at some point were looking into a mirror and life was fresh and they had a moment. And you do this to prepare for death, to get a sense of urgency that life is precious, to feel grateful that you're actually alive, and this is a really big deal. And to ease your anxiety around, illness and tragedy. So that's this week's action. There's going to be more information on the community. The sound journey is going to be performance statement, Stoic performance statement. So a sound journey is going to be a bit different from a meditation. Some of you have done sound journeys already. Sound journeys are designed to provoke emotion. And emotion is the catalyst for growth, transformation, and change. And this week, we're going to be creating a performance statement. A performance statement is like a short maxim that you create yourself, that you bring to mind every time you go off the path. So you feel lazy, say your performance statement. You are going to do something out of integrity, performance statement. You say it. You can write it down, put it near your computer, near your desk, wherever. And this meditation is going to ideally do it at the beginning of the day. It's going to have you meditate on your performance statement. And it's ultimately designed to inspire you. And it sounds very simple, but rest assured that this technique is super powerful if you do it. And if you do the sound journey every day, you will do it. All sound journeys are around 10 to 12 minutes long. So I hope that you have a really good reason not to do it. If you don't, I won't judge you, but I think you can fit in 10 to 12 minutes a day. And then the daily challenge. So this is the challenge you're going to be doing every day. So in the meet and greets, I told you that I'd like you to get a journal and a pen. And this is going to be a journaling exercise every day. Depending what time it is where you are now, if it's morning, do this today. If it's evening, you be your own judge. But either starting today or tomorrow, I want you to get your journal, and I want you to write in your journal a question that you would ask a Stoic, like Seneca, like Marcus Aurelius, any wise person, a question, a piece of advice. So it could be something like, what should I do about my boss who keeps picking on me in work? That's an example. Should I break up with my girlfriend? I don't know. Like, we're not getting along. It could be something bigger, like, what is my purpose in life? You decide. Just write something that's relevant to you. Just one question per day. Now, this is the fun part. Then I want you to answer your own question, but I want you to answer as you think a Stoic sage would answer. So answer as you think Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or Epictetus would answer. You can just Google some quotes from these guys for inspiration. It doesn't need to sound like them necessarily, but to try and tap into that headspace. Imagine that you were an actor playing the part of a Stoic sage, and you had to play the part of giving advice to this question in relation to you. And the reason I want you to start with this is because I want you to start thinking like a Stoic and realize that actually the wisdom is already in you. This is not about learning loads of stuff outside of ourselves. Wisdom is there. It's like Michelangelo was asked, how did you sculpt the angel in the stone? He said, the angel was already there. I just set him free. And that's how you should think about yourself as a Stoic. There is a Stoic in you. There is a great wise sage in you. Imagine if you did everything you know you should do for the last 5 years. Where would you be now? You'd who knows? So we want to cultivate and unlock that inner sage within you. And again, there'll be more information about this on the community. So I'll be very active in the community. Mike will be active. Other high existence team members will be active too. So you're totally not going to be on your own in the week. Really, this is just sort of a bookmark that these workshops are. A lot of the real work is going to be done in between. And that is that for this week. So I'd like to now, we've been going for an hour and 7 minutes. I don't know if that's too long for some of you. You can let me know the ideal length. But if you have any questions at all, I can stick around for a bit and answer them. Okay, I'm going to read some of the comments. That's great. There's a lot of messages. 50. That's awesome. Timothy, I wouldn't trade a moment of perceived misery or pain that I've gone through. All of it, good, bad, or otherwise, is what has brought me to be right here, right now. Love that. Can we get a link for that video? May. Okay. I'll give you a link, but you can go on YouTube and just type in "Good" by Jocko Willink. Oh, Mike's replied. Rajvi, get a link. Timothy says, I revel in how much I do not know yet, and pity all those that think they've nothing to learn. Yes. Yep. You've got some gems coming, Timothy. I've spent a lot of time avoiding process and searching for an event, learning to give myself to the journey and to the process for the sake of the journey and the process. Love it. This is, if you can write like this to yourself in the daily journaling challenge, that would be amazing. James says, we are nature, and nature is us. We cannot benefit or harm one without benefiting or harming the other. Yes. Yeah, we are nature. Love it. Indifferent, like neutral, Angela? Yeah, exactly. It's neutral. It's like, it's not good or bad. It's like, it's like me holding up like light gray or dark gray and saying, what color taxi would you like to be in? So I guess I'd prefer dark gray because it'll look cooler when I arrive, but not really that passionate about it. Yeah, May attended the first trauma workshop. I'm going to skip to the most recent messages. Angela, yeah, love it. Thanks, Sean. I'm on board. Trust the process. The length was perfect. Cool, Jake. Length was great. Length was great. I'm not seeing any major questions coming up right now. So what I'm thinking is that there seems to be a lot of sharing going on, which is beautiful. That's what we want. We want to just share and talk. And probably the best place to do this will be in the community that we've made. So I'm going to check out. I hope that's all good. Just checking in. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Love you. And I'll see you in the community. Can't wait to talk to you. Have a great day, everyone.